Good day, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the Privateer 161 aluminum full suspension bike from Privateer Bikes, straight out of the UK. This sturdy machine is designed for enduro racing first and foremost, and it's designed to hold up underneath privateer racers who don't have a team behind them to take care of their bikes and brush their teeth. It needs to kind of minimize the amount of time they need to work on their bikes and maximize the amount of time they can spend checking out the trail and hanging out in cool venues wherever the EWS happens to be. To make the bike affordable, the Privateer 161 was designed with off-the-shelf tubing, which means that they're using tubes that are used on some other bikes, so kind of cut the cost to not have all of the tubes designed specifically for this bike, while the rocker link is proprietary and specific to the bike. And of course the geometry and how everything's put together was decided by the folks at Privateer and by Alistair Beckett. And you can learn more about Alistair's work in our podcast, where Jeff interviewed him about the process of creating a new bike frame. The 161 has 161 millimeters of rear wheel travel, as the name implies, and works with a 170 or 180 millimeter fork, with the three largest sizes rolling on 29-inch wheels and the smallest size on 27.5. The rear end has a super clean horse link suspension design with tons of room for mud, and to add to the bike's serviceability, the bottom bracket and most of the cables and housing are external to make it really quick and easy to swap things out. There's also a set of clamps at the head tube that grab the hoses and cables and kind of hold them in place, keep them from banging against the frame, and between those and the frame protection on this bike, it is really quiet. I mean, surprisingly quiet for such a big bike. And speaking of which, I wanted to apologize for the squeaking noise in this video. My brake rotors need to be cleaned pretty badly, but I've been leaving them like that because our trails are packed full of people and they kind of act as a free bell. Anyhow, this frame set with a RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate shock sells for $1,759 US. And complete bikes go for $3,719 with a $112 shipping charge to the US. So for under $4K, you'll have a race-ready bike that's super easy to work on and will last a long time. Onto the geometry chart, this size 2 frame that I'm on, which is the smallest 29er they make, has a 470 millimeter reach, 440 millimeter chainstays, which get longer or shorter by 6 millimeters for each size, a 64 degree head tube angle with the 170 millimeter fork, and a nice short 420 millimeter seat tube, which means that I was able to put a 170 millimeter dropper post in this bike and still had a little bit of room to go. That also means that someone a fair bit shorter than me could ride this bike with a little less dropper post travel if they wanted to, which is pretty impressive for a bike with that much reach, particularly considering some people might say that I'm kind of right on the cusp of tall enough to ride a 29er at 5'8". The most impressive number on the geometry chart for this bike is its 80 degree seat tube angle. It's the steepest seat tube of any bike on the market as far as I know, and it makes a notable difference while climbing. You don't have to sit on the very nose of the saddle all awkwardly and try and get your weight over the front to keep the front wheel from wobbling around. So your weight stays in a more natural climbing position without having the saddle slammed all the way forward. That also leaves folks with a little more room to move their saddle where they want it instead of just pushing it all the way forward like a lot of people are having to do on new bikes. I gotta say that steeper angle and the overall position while climbing makes this heavy bike. This thing is over 35 pounds. I mean, it's really impressive to climb with, even on nice technical trails that are actually fun to climb. Like, you don't necessarily feel like you're on a huge downhill beast, but you are. Speaking of downhill, once gravity takes over, this bike really loves to go fast. It is long, it is slack, and it is stable and designed to go plow super hard and super fast through rough trails. And it does that really well. I'd say the closest comparison to any bike that I've tested recently would be to the Specialized Enduro both bikes, while they are a fantastic plow and they do the things that you need to do in an enduro really well, they blast through nasty chunks of trail. They also can be popped around, and while not necessarily playful, it's not impossible to put them where you want them and to pop off jumps and have fun. And I'd say for the right rider, myself included, this is a great all-day bike to just go play in the mountains. I mean, it's not just a race bike, even though that is specifically what it's built for. It's really fun to just ride. It feels super comfortable. It cleans up a lot of mistakes because it will just take over and correct, and kind of, you know, it's slack enough and long enough that it'll fix the problems for you when you need it. I tested the 161 with the air shock that came with it first, and it felt really nice and a little more lively, a little more pop at the end of the stroke. It held up slightly better in big compressions, and then I also tested it with the Formula Mod coil with a little bit oversprung setup, and that was really nice at the bike park and anywhere where I was digging into deeper compressions and needed the bike to stand up. And now that I'm back home, back on national lockdown, I've got a lighter spring on it, and I can take things a little easier and ride a little slower, and also just have a little better traction in the looser conditions and piles of leaves that we're riding through quite a bit this fall and early winter. The stock build for this bike is super smart. The full SLX drivetrain that won't cost a ton to swap out parts as they wear and break, while they kept the XT shifter so that you can double shift in both directions, whereas if they went with the SLX it would be a single on the upshifts, so it's a really smart move. It's got some nice super strong Magura brakes and RockShox Lyrik ultimate fork. This thing is really built to go fast and no money wasted anywhere, while at the same time they set the bike up with proper components for actual racing. It's not missing anything. And in fact, the stock build comes with a super sticky set of Michelin Wild Enduro tires that'll be perfect. Head over to Singletracks.com to check out the full review, as well as loads of other news and reviews on all kinds of cool stuff. Peace.